but their depth range is actually quite narrow, between 6 and 7,500 meters. So obviously we don't catch them very often at all.
Footage captured from the depths of the Mariana Trench revealed something no one expected to see: a vertebrate fish moving calmly at nearly 26,000 feet below the surface. In a place where scientists once believed complex life simply couldn't survive, an 8 to 10 inch fish was not only alive, but actively hunting. When researchers first reviewed the video, their reaction was immediate. That shouldn't exist. This is the deepest region on Earth. At its lowest point, known as Challenger Deep, the trench plunges to around 36,000 feet. To put that into perspective, if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the summit would still sit more than a mile underwater. Down there, pressure reaches over 16,000 pounds per square inch. Sunlight never penetrates. Temperatures hover just above freezing. Food is scarce. For decades, the scientific assumption was simple: nothing complex could live here. That assumption started to unravel in 2019 when explorer Victor Vescovo descended into Challenger Deep aboard the DSV limiting factor during the 5 Deeps expedition. The journey down took more than 4 hours through total darkness. Expectations were low, maybe some sediment, perhaps microbial life. But when the light switched on near the ocean floor, what appeared on camera changed everything. Instead of emptiness, there was movement. Within minutes, the team observed swarms of amphipods, shrimp-like creatures crowding around bait. Not a few scattered individuals, but dense, active clusters competing for food like animals in any thriving ecosystem. And these weren't tiny either. Some measured several inches long, far larger than their shallow water relatives. Then came the sea cucumbers, foot-long creatures steadily crawling across the seafloor, feeding and moving with purpose. These weren't microscopic organisms barely clinging to survival. They were large, mobile, and clearly adapted. But the biggest shock came next. Fish, snailfish, translucent and delicate-looking, appeared at depths beyond 26,000 feet. These weren't simple life forms. They had spines, brains, circulatory systems, fully developed vertebrates. They moved with control, hunting and navigating their environment as if nothing about it was extreme. For scientists, this wasn't just surprising. It directly challenged everything they thought they knew about life under pressure. Think about what that means. These animals are built from proteins, structures that, under such intense pressure, should collapse or malfunction. Yet here they were, functioning normally in conditions that should make survival impossible. And this wasn't a one-time sighting. Multiple dives, multiple cameras, and hours of footage all showed the same thing: a living, active ecosystem at the very bottom of the ocean, creatures feeding, interacting, competing, proving that this environment isn't barren, it's inhabited. So, how is any of this possible? The answer is both simple and fascinating. Deep-sea organisms don't fight the pressure, they adapt to it. Their bodies are largely made of water, which doesn't compress easily. Instead of being crushed, they exist in balance with the immense forces around them, and that realization changes everything. Take a closer look at how life has adapted to survive in the freezing, pitch-black depths of the ocean. Down there, pressure isn't something these animals struggle against. It's something they're perfectly balanced with. The force inside their bodies matches the force outside, so they don't feel crushed anymore than you feel the weight of the atmosphere around you right now. The real challenge isn't structural, it's chemical. Proteins, the tiny machines that keep every cell alive, have to maintain their exact shape to function. Even a slight distortion can render them useless. Cell membranes must stay flexible enough to allow nutrients and molecules to pass through, even in near-freezing temperatures. And the enzymes that drive every biological reaction have to keep working, despite conditions that should shut them down completely. So how does life manage this? Deep-sea organisms didn't reinvent biology, they fine-tuned it. Their proteins are slightly modified to remain stable under extreme pressure. Their cell membranes contain specialized fats that stay fluid instead of stiffening in the cold. Their enzymes are pressure-adapted versions of the same ones found in organisms all over Earth. Nothing alien, nothing entirely new. Just subtle adjustments to a biological system that's been evolving for billions of years. And that's what makes this discovery so unsettling. Life didn't need entirely new tools to survive in one of the harshest environments on the planet. It simply tweaked what it already had. That realization forces a much bigger question. How many other impossible environments could actually support life? Places we've written off, deep beneath Earth's surface, or the hidden oceans beneath the icy crust of Europa and Enceladus, might not be as lifeless as we once believed. For years, the search for life beyond Earth has been based on a checklist: the right temperature, the right chemistry, liquid water under the right conditions. But what this deep-sea footage suggests is that life doesn't strictly depend on perfect conditions. It depends on what it can adapt to. And that range might be far wider than we ever imagined. Extreme pressure isn't a barrier, it's just another environment. What makes the discovery even more surprising is the diversity. This wasn't a single species barely surviving, it was dozens, all functioning together. Scientists once imagined that, at best, extreme depths might host one or two highly specialized organisms clinging to survival, but the footage revealed something entirely different. Multiple species of amphipods, each with different forms and feeding behaviors. Various sea cucumbers moving in distinct ways. Several types of snailfish adapted to slightly different depth ranges. Alongside them, polychaete worms, isopods, and other organisms still being studied. And they weren't just coexisting, they were interacting. Predators hunting prey, scavengers feeding on leftovers, filter feeders processing particles drifting through the water, organisms breaking down organic matter in the sediment. This wasn't a random collection of life. It was a structured food web, a layered ecosystem where each species plays a role. That's not what survival at the edge looks like. That's what a fully functioning ecosystem looks like. The same fundamental structure you'd see in a forest or a coral reef, rebuilt from scratch in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. The rules of ecology don't vanish under pressure. They still apply. Life still follows them. And the scale of this discovery is hard to ignore. The footage captured only a tiny patch of seafloor, just a few dozen square yards. But the Mariana Trench spans thousands of square miles. The entire Hadal zone, depths below 20,000 feet, covers tens of thousands of square miles across the Pacific. Almost all of it remains unexplored. If such a small observed area supports a complex ecosystem, what's happening across the rest of that vast, unseen world? Even more surprising was the behavior itself. Many scientists assumed that any life at these depths would move slowly, conserving energy in a place where food is scarce. But that's not what the footage showed. Amphipods were fast, aggressive, constantly competing, just like species in nutrient-rich environments. And when researchers measured their metabolism, it confirmed the same story. These organisms weren't barely surviving. They were active, efficient, and fully engaged with their environment. That challenges the model at its core, because those assumptions shape everything: what environments we study, which planets we consider worth exploring, and which ones we dismiss entirely. And now, those assumptions are starting to fall apart. Amphipods, tiny crustaceans from the order Amphipoda, exist in thousands of species across oceans, rivers, and even on land. But in the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench, they've adapted so completely that what seems extreme to us is just normal to them. 16,000 pounds per square inch of pressure, near freezing water, total permanent darkness. None of it slows them down. They move, feed, and compete as if these conditions are no different from a shallow reef or coastal shoreline. To them, the cold isn't harsh, the pressure isn't crushing, and the darkness isn't empty. It's simply home, and they're not just surviving, they're thriving. But that leads to a deeper mystery. The footage confirmed that life exists at the very bottom of the ocean, but it immediately raised a much harder question. What's sustaining it? Unlike surface ecosystems, the deep ocean gets no energy from sunlight. The main known food source is something called marine snow, a slow, constant fall of dead organisms, waste, and organic debris drifting down from above. But when scientists calculated how much of this material actually reaches the seafloor at Challenger Deep, the numbers didn't add up. There simply isn't enough to support the abundance of life seen on camera. So something else must be feeding this ecosystem. One possibility is chemosynthetic bacteria, organisms that draw energy from chemicals in Earth's crust, much like plants use sunlight. Another is undiscovered hydrothermal vents releasing heat and nutrients into the surrounding water. There's also the idea that these deep-sea ecosystems recycle energy with extreme efficiency, wasting almost nothing and squeezing more biological output from every input than anything we see near the surface. Or there could be an entirely unknown energy source, something scientists never even considered because, until recently, no one thought anything down there needed feeding in the first place. Some researchers are beginning to entertain a radical idea. What if the deep ocean isn't a barren wasteland at all? What if it's actually one of the most stable and efficient ecosystems on Earth? In that case, the sunlit surface, constantly changing, temperature-sensitive, and unpredictable, might be the less stable environment. And there's another detail that can't be ignored. Even at these extreme depths, human impact has already arrived. A plastic bag was spotted resting on the seafloor. Amphipods collected from the trench contain microplastics in their systems, nearly 7 miles below the surface, still not untouched. These organisms evolved over millions of years to handle immense pressure and darkness, but they were never designed to deal with what we've introduced into their world. And then there's what the cameras didn't show. Everything recorded, the snailfish, the swarming amphipods, the complex food web, represents only the creatures willing to approach the lights. It's a limited view, a biased sample, the bold, the curious, the hungry. But what about everything that stayed hidden? The footage captured hints of it, disturbances in the sediment just beyond the camera's reach, movements that appeared briefly in the light, then vanished before they could be identified, shadows that didn't match any known species, shapes crossing the frame too quickly to study. And that leads to an even bigger question. If vertebrates like snailfish, up to 10 inches long, can live and hunt at these depths, what's the real size limit for life down there? From a physics standpoint, pressure doesn't necessarily restrict size. It equalizes across the body regardless of how large an organism is. In fact, larger animals could have an advantage. They can store more energy, which is crucial in an environment where food isn't always predictable. And the food is there. Dense swarms of amphipods, large sea cucumbers, active fish, a ready-made ecosystem with no surface predators reaching down to compete. Sonar scans of the trench have even picked up large moving objects, signals that don't match any known species. For years, these were dismissed as equipment errors or geological anomalies. But now, with clear evidence that complex life exists at these depths, those explanations don't feel as solid as they once did. Some of those signals might be alive. If they are, they would have to be something substantial, large enough to reflect sonar, adapted enough to avoid light, and evolved to live entirely in darkness. Creatures that have been there far longer than we've been searching for them. To put it in perspective, the largest confirmed vertebrate at these depths, the snailfish, reaches about 10 inches. So, what exactly is producing those larger sonar returns? That's the question no one can answer, at least not yet. Those sonar readings don't match anything we currently recognize. They're not the size of snailfish. They're significantly larger, bigger than anything ever filmed at these depths, and beyond anything marine biology has officially identified in the Hadal zone. Yet something is moving down there, nearly 7 miles beneath the surface, in total darkness, inside an ecosystem we only recently confirmed even exists. And here's the key detail. The creatures we did see were the ones that came toward the cameras, curious, hungry, or simply unbothered by the light. But whatever is producing those sonar signals, it's doing the opposite. It's staying hidden. The Mariana Trench alone stretches across thousands of square miles. Expand that to the full Hadal zone, depths between 20,000 and 36,000 feet, and you're looking at roughly 45,000 square miles of seafloor scattered across trenches in the Pacific Rim. That's about the size of an entire U.S. state like Pennsylvania, and almost all of it remains unseen. What we have observed, just a few dozen square yards at Challenger Deep, already shattered decades of scientific assumptions. It proved that complex ecosystems can exist where we once thought life was impossible. but that leaves an enormous question hanging in the dark. The other 44,999 square miles? We haven't really looked. Whatever exists in those depths has likely been there for millions of years, evolving in isolation, adapting to extreme pressure, freezing temperatures, and complete darkness. Environments no camera has captured, depths barely reached, a world that existed long before humans even had a concept for deep sea. And the clues are still there. Those unexplained sonar contacts continue to appear. The strange disturbances just beyond camera range remain unresolved. Shadows still pass through the edges of the light, never fully revealing themselves. We don't know what they are. And maybe the most unsettling part isn't that we don't have answers. It's how little we've actually tried to find them. One small glimpse into a massive hidden ecosystem was enough to overturn a century of assumptions. And then, for the most part, we stopped looking. So, now it turns back to you. What do you think those sonar signals represent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to go even deeper next time, into places that surprised even the researchers, make sure you're subscribed. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. The deeper you think about it, the clearer it becomes. We've barely scratched the surface of what's really down there. A single expedition, a handful of dives, and just a tiny window into a world that spans tens of thousands of square miles. And yet, it was enough to completely rewrite what we thought we knew about life on Earth. If complex ecosystems can't exist under that kind of pressure, in total darkness, with almost no visible energy source, then how many other impossible environments have we dismissed too quickly? How many places, on this planet or beyond it, are we overlooking simply because they don't fit our expectations? The ocean's deepest trenches aren't just remote. They're isolated in a way that few environments on Earth are, cut off from sunlight, largely disconnected from surface ecosystems, and shaped by conditions we're only beginning to understand. Evolution down there doesn't follow the same visible patterns we're used to. It happens quietly, over millions of years, hidden from view, which means whatever is living in those unexplored regions may not just be unfamiliar, it could be fundamentally different in ways we haven't even imagined yet. And that brings us back to those sonar readings. Large, moving objects, consistent signals, detected again and again, yet never clearly identified. Before, it was easy to dismiss them. Faulty equipment, strange rock formations, random noise. But now, that explanation feels incomplete because we know life is down there, not just surviving, but active, complex, and widespread. So the real question isn't if something is out there, it's what we're not seeing yet.